Hello, my oxes and foxes. It's Carla, and I am here again in my kitchen today with a brand new recipe, French onion and oxtail soup. It has come to my attention recently that the people would like a French onion soup, and I am happy to oblige. In the recipe development process, I watched lots and lots of French onion soup videos, looked at a bunch of recipes, and my number one beef is that at a certain point they just tell you to grab 2 quarts of delicious homemade beef stock, but nobody tells you how to make it. So for my recipe, I developed an extremely delicious fortified beef stock. So I'm gonna show you how to make the stock on day 1, which is how I recommend. And then I'm also gonna show you what I did to make the caramelized onions also better. And then we all know the best part of the French onion soup is spooning into the molten cheesy layer. I dare declare that this cheesy layer is gonna make every other cheese topping look like a sad, battered, withered, ripped apart surrender flag just lying in the dirt. Today's episode is sponsored by one of my absolute favorite brands, Goldilocks. We are in year 2 of working with Goldilocks, and I could not be more proud to rep this brand. At this point, I'm cooking with Goldilocks. I got my mom cooking with Goldilocks. My older son has the Goldilocks up at college. A bunch of you guys are already enjoying Goldilocks pans. What's awesome about Goldilocks is that they believe in really well-designed and purposeful cookware. And I really believe that having well-made, purposeful cookware is going to make you a better cook. There's nothing more upsetting than going out and venturing out on a recipe and to have it not work out, and it's really not you. It could be your pan. So if you're ready to upgrade to some serious cookware, but you don't want to buy something and absolutely blow your budget and break the bank, these are the pieces that you want to have. Go to cookgoldilocks.com/Carla to browse the collection, pick out what will work for you in your kitchen. These pieces are backed by a lifetime guarantee. There's really nothing not to love. We love Goldilocks. Go check them out, cookgoldilocks.com/Carla. Get to it. French onion soup or no French onion soup, everybody should know how to make a great beef stock, and we don't talk about it enough. We're talking about chicken stock all the time, and mushroom stock and mushroom trimmings all the time. We need to be talking about beef stock. Every stock is gonna follow some basic principles, right? There's bones, water, aromatics. That's essentially it. But in each of those, you have choices. I am choosing really fantastic bones. I wanted meaty bones. I wanted bones that were gonna give a lot of flavor, but also a lot of body, collagen, richness, the kind of stock that when you take it out the next day, it's like, ugh. So in order to get there, I was like, oxtails. Oxtails are amazing. They have bones, they also have a lot of collagen, and they have just a really perfect ratio of delicious meat. And because they're like a braising kind of a cut, they're meant to be long cooked. They have a lot of flavor to give. So this is 50% oxtail bones, and then the other 50%, I'm just calling for a meaty beef bone, because that meat is also giving a lot of flavor in addition to the bone, which is obviously more flavor, but also collagen, the richness, all of that body is coming from bones. So at My Fantastic Butcher, they have just in their like freezer bags of different kinds of bones, and they have beef neck bones. So beef neck bones kind of had everything I was looking for. A lot of bone, but some nice beefy bits too, some nice connective tissue, which is that collagen, the body, the richness, the gelatin. I'm roasting in a 12-inch skillet. I find this to be better than roasting on a rimmed baking sheet because you capture more of the juices, and then it's also a lot easier to deglaze and pour these bones into the stock pot later. And these pans can go stovetop to oven, no sweat. So my oven is at 400 degrees. I'm gonna lightly salt. A lot of people will tell you don't salt the stock because if you reduce it later, it can get too salty. Fine, that's on my mind. I'm salting sparingly, but I do believe that it's gonna help with the flavor. And then as I often do, just to get things started, start getting some heat conducting, start moving fats around. I'm adding just a little bit of vegetable oil just to coat. I'm gonna take my rings off and then toss this together with my hand so everything is coated. The reason the soup is so good is because of the beef stock. This is ooh la la. This is très chic. We're doing it the right way. And these are gonna roast until they're really brown, really caramelized. I'm gonna toss them every now and again, but that's gonna take 50, 55, maybe call it the better part of an hour. Roasty bone time. These have been in the oven about 55 minutes. They're really well caramelized. Even the fat is caramelized. There's some hissing and sizzling and good noises like that happening. Straight from here, I'm gonna go into my stock pot where I'm gonna build the whole broth. Any fat or juices that are on your skillet, you just wanna make sure that those get into the pot too. And I'm gonna cover this with 6 quarts of water. I'm gonna start over high heat. To flavor this now, I'm dropping in 2 dried shiitake caps, which give like really lovely umami flavor. And also, stealing from pho broth, I'm adding a couple of pieces of star anise. I'm also gonna add now another thing that gives beautiful color, umami flavor, a little bit more salt. It's just gonna be really nice flavor in the soup. Almost at a simmer, there's already foam, so I'm just gonna skim. These are what the little bits of protein look like. That's like, you know, the blood coagulating. And you just wanna take those off as you go. And essentially this is it for the next couple of hours. So if you stroll by, just make sure that you're at a bare simmer. Give it a skim every once in a while. Set a timer for a couple hours, and we shall be back. This is what your stock is gonna look like at about 2 hours. Not that different, not a ton of evaporation because we're keeping the simmer really low. The meat on the bones, if you press against it, is gonna feel still very bouncy, very firm. So that's gonna get more tender over time. And then as we've been going, you know, I've got like a bowl of fat like this. I'm just taking that off now with like more of a flat, wide spoon. And you will have quite a bit of beef fat later. If you're chilling the soup, all of that fat's gonna rise and you can take it off once it's chilled. At this point of your stock sitting, you're halfway through, I'm putting in my carrots that are just peeled and cut in half. I learned that peeling carrots is a little less bitter in stock. And this half onion is taken from the total amount of onions that's gonna go into the caramelized onions. And just a handful of thyme to give a little squeeze. This is the community for the second half of the stock simmer. I'm gonna get a little sweetness and brightness from the vegetables that are in here. It's just gonna round out the flavor. And another 2 hours until the meat is really has given all it has to give. And the stock is gonna taste like really robust. It shouldn't evaporate too much, but it'll come down a little bit more. And at that point we can strain it. It smells amazing. It looks fantastic. And now I'm gonna show you how I like to strain stock that has lots of bones in it. My method is to have a vessel big enough to hold all of the stock. I have a colander set in there, and that is where I'm just gonna get all the really big things out. If I were to just pour this through a fine mesh strainer, it would splash, it would plop, it would overflow the strainer for sure. And so this way I can get all these big giant meaty pieces out of the way, let them cool down. I do pick through this meat and give it to Marge. I think that eating the carrots is one of the great things that you can do because they're so filled with protein. So I've got a little bit of liquid that came off. I'm just gonna pour that back over here and then grab a fine mesh strainer and then pour through again. So you can see it's got this really beautiful golden brown, rich color. So once you've strained it, you should have between 4.5 and 5 quarts. You actually have extra stock, more stock than you're gonna need for the soup. Having an extra quart of stock to put into the freezer is just like fantastic secret treasure trove waiting for you. I wanna finish seasoning the stock to taste, and I'm using a couple more ingredients that are giving more depth, a little more saltiness, a little more umami, staying in that kind of brown town flavor profile. So a tablespoon of Worcester, and I really like fish sauce to finish off like long braises, long, rich, fatty, meaty things, like a little fish sauce at the end of like a lamb stew is incredible. I'm gonna add a little MSG, which just makes everything delicious and has all of the umami that this is just like an umami bomb anyway. A little more regular salt, because the only salt in this until now has been the little bit that I salted the bones with. Now for the part of the show where I precariously pour something that took 4 hours to make, and everyone here is terrified. And I hope you at home are also terrified, because we love terror. Perfect. 1 quart. Let this cool, then cover and chill. Same for your big batch. Let cool, cover and chill. And I will see you fools tomorrow. I am getting ready for the onion part of the French onion soup. And what I have here is 2.5 pounds of onions. The first time I did the recipe, I was going for like a very thin caramelized onion, which, you know, having done some research, that's what most people do for French onion soup. So I did that. And it took like over 2 hours of active time just to deal with the onions. And then the other thing I didn't really care for was you just get soup that has a lot of like stringy, slippery things in it. So that night I stared at the ceiling and decided, like, what if the onions weren't cut so small? You could get a lot more color a lot faster. And then when you ate the soup, you would actually get like some bites of onion. So that's where I ended up. These are 1/2-inch slices. And this is the pot that I'm going to build the entire soup in. So the broth is going to end up in here and everything else. So I'm going to start with some vegetable oil. You could use olive oil, I guess. I don't think it needs to taste like olive oil. It's more about the sweetness of the onion and the broth coming through. And I use neutral oil to brown the bones. So this is over medium-ish. I want to start a little bit high to get things going. And then I have a little bit of butter and just get this butter foaming. So the first stage is about jump starting the onions, getting them to release a lot of liquid quickly. And then once that process is started, then I can start building color. But this takes about 25 minutes as opposed to like over 2 hours. So that was a good change. The heat, the salt, and the fat are gonna be what starts driving the liquid off. They're sizzling. It's sounding juicy. And now with the heat pretty moderate, I'm going to keep it covered, create steam and pressure, and let these go for about 5 minutes. Check them out. Lots of steam, a little bit of color, which I'm totally fine with. I've got tender, juicy onions that are starting to soften, which is exactly what I want. And this next phase, I'm gonna cook uncovered with the heat medium-high and really try to rapidly evaporate liquid, because with a ton of liquid present, you're not gonna get a lot of browning. I can also toss the thyme in now, give a little squeeze. So I want to give these time to like be down on the surface of the pot and start to take color and resist the urge to constantly toss. It's gonna take like 12 minutes. All right, I'm gonna toss and I'm gonna show you what to do if your onions aren't evenly browned, but you're starting to see a lot of browning on the surface of the pan. So if this happens to you, there's 3 things that you can do, and you can do them together individually. One is nudge your heat down. The second thing you can do is just add a splash of water. I don't want a ton of water in here because we just had a whole conversation about steaming. You can just scrape up the browning with a wooden spoon. The third thing you can do, and I'm probably going to do this in addition to adding that water, is just cover the pot for a couple of minutes. All right, this is where I want to land. I have onions that are really nice and caramelized on the edges. They are floppy without having absolutely no integrity. They're tender, but there's something still there because they're gonna keep cooking in the stock. So I'm gonna deglaze with some white vermouth. If you have white wine open, use that. If you don't drink, use water. Use something like sake would be good. The first batch of the caramelized onions, I actually tried using rye whiskey and it was also good. So, you know, just go rummage around in your liquor cabinet for something that works. So I want to cook off the vermouth. And I'm also using the vermouth to help me release all that fond. My recipe also has a bit of Urfa chili, which is a not too hot chili that has really nice dark raisin chocolatey notes. I'm doing a little more than half a teaspoon. You don't have to use it. You could use a pinch of cayenne or red chili flakes or Aleppo or gochugaru. I always am looking for like that little bit of tingly to balance everything out. This looks great. The vermouth is absorbed / evaporated. Okay, so now I've got all-purpose flour. And the reason the flour goes in is to help give the soup a little bit of body so that you don't feel like you're just drinking stock. I've kept it on a very light ratio of flour. It's a really nice contrast to have the light textured broth with all of the rich cheese and the crouton on top. I'm going to cook this for about a minute just to cook off any raw flour taste. You're not really going to be able to analyze this like as a blonde roux or a darker roux because there's so much color already in the bottom of this pan. So just go with your nose. I'm just gonna slow this down for a second so I can show you the stock that we made yesterday. So this is that layer of fat that I was talking about was gonna rise to the top. So that's a lot easier than like meticulously spooning liquid hot fat off of a simmering soup. Also, you can see the body of this stock is like thicker. It's not freezing cold right now, but that's all of the collagen that has come out of the bones and the connective tissue and the marrow and all that stuff. So this is where the stock and the caramelized onions become onion and oxtail soup. And they need this time to simmer 25 minutes. You want flavors to meld. Now I'm gonna add about a half a cup of red wine. Shout out Molly Boz. This is a delicious drinking red wine. Put something into the soup that you're gonna drink with dinner. Now for the fun part, butter cheesy toast. So I'm gonna butter some nice slices of bread, like sourdough is really nice. Country loaf, this is a delicious Pullman that has some polenta in it. Whatever toast you'd use to make a crouton is great. I have my toaster oven set to 400 degrees. Set a timer for 6 and then take a look because you don't want to burn them. I burn them. Now I'm gonna make the cheese mixture that goes on top. Classically, it's Gruyere. A lot of people reached out and said like a slice of Swiss cheese is what they really like, or a combo. I wanted something really cheesy. I wanted that Gruyere flavor. I wanted a really great cheese pull. And so I decided to cut my cheese mixture 50-50 with low moisture mozzarella, which is just the mozzarella that comes like shrink wrapped like polio, not fresh mozzarella. And I don't know, I just wanted the cheese topping to like do a little more work. The best video I watched was episode of Julia Child, and she did all these different versions, and one of the versions she did, she finished with grated raw onion. That stuck in my head. I loved that as a topping. So the way that I've interpreted that is just having some thinly sliced scallion greens and scallion whites that I mix into the cheese. Big pinch of Urfa. You do not need salt. If you're using Urfa, I don't really think you need black pepper, but you could use black pepper instead of Urfa. and just tossing this together. Buttery bread. Never gets old. Nice and crispy, nice and brown, but the underside is like a little bit softer. This was a late addition to the recipe, but a little smear of Dijon mustard I think goes so well with cheese, and mustard and onion go so well together. I think we get to make soup now. Oof, 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 oof. The one last thing that I'm going to do at the end of this is season the soup with some sherry vinegar. You could use lemon juice, you could use any other vinegar. Again, long cooked flavors like really come alive and like gel in another way with a little bit of acidity. Yes, oui garçon. Okay, now in order to put soup under a broiler, you need to have the right kind of bowl. I happen to have the right kind of bowl because these are my grandmother's and I've had these forever. They're the perfect, like what you think of when you think of French onion soup. They can catch the spillover and they're pottery, so they're completely impervious to the heat. And we're on foil just because we're gonna have a cheese overflow and it's gonna make cleaning up easier. And you're just going for like a nice ratio of onion and broth. So scoop from the bottom. Crouton on top. If you have an oval piece of bread, just tear it in half so it fits. Ooh, right on the edge. Okay, I don't mind a little tilt. Heaping 1/4 cup per, approximately 2 ounces. I'm gonna put these into the toaster oven and then I'm gonna turn the broiler on. It's all right. Is it all right? Oh, my darling. Oh, my darling. Oh, my God. Ooh. She's beautiful to me. Oh, yes, indeed. Yum. I love the little spotting of brown, but that there's also like cheese lava. I love that the crouton doesn't fit perfectly, so this is like really crunchy, the parts that were up and exposed, but then it's like jubbly and wobbly underneath. Mozzarella to my face. A mozzarella to my face. Mmm. 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 I love the brothy bread. I love that multiple textures off the bread. I really rode the wave of recipe development working on this. There was a point when I was sweating over 2-hour caramelized onions where I wondered, what is this? Why does it exist? Do people really like this? Does anybody eat this? What is the point of this? Which is natural and normal for like somewhere in between stage 2 and stage 3 of recipe development, when you start to wonder if you can cook, if you know anything, if food is good. It all kind of goes into the toilet. And then you have your breakthrough, and then that leads to Act 4, which is triumph and joy and success and overcoming of all hurdles and obstacles, which is where I am now, enjoying my French onion soup. Thank you to Goldilocks for making roasting of my bones possible, for making simmering of my stock possible, and for making melding possible. We love you, Goldilocks. Thank you so much. I don't think Molly would mind that I'm cooking with her wine. Yum.